Yeah, so just officially, I'd like to welcome everyone to our panel discussion titled New Beginnings, Creating Change in a Changing World. Again, I'm Sandra Krahn, the Executive Director of the Manitoba Association for Rights and Liberties, and Clayton Sandy is going to be opening the panel for us today.
Great, thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you for inviting me here. It's my first time being at this location. It's quite a big place. I'm going to start off this evening by doing the land acknowledgement and then doing our open prayer. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody. We're on Treaty 1 land, homeland of Ojibwe, Cree, Dakota, Dene, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And the land we get comes from Shoal Lake. And I'd like to start off with a quick prayer. Creator, thank you for another beautiful day of life. Thank you for bringing us here this evening. Ask that you watch over us, keep us in good faith, and ask that you open the minds here and ask people to listen with open minds and to feel comfortable enough to ask questions, and ask that you look after us and look after our homes and our loved ones, and ask that you keep us in good faith, home back to us. Thank you.
So one of the things that's just been happening over the last 2 years as we've kind of been adapting to kind of a virtual environment with COVID is there's been a lot more kind of partnerships between a variety of different organizations. So MARL's been kind of connecting with different organizations. We've been involved in kind of some anti-racism campaigns, some human rights and advocacy training, and that's where I started to meet Clayton. I started to see him in a lot of the meetings that I was going to, and so it's been a really good experience just getting to know, just people that are in the broader community working with different communities. And we received a grant from the Winnipeg Foundation last year to put together advisory committees. And so this kind of event is coming out of our Indigenous Advisory Committee. And just kind of, we've spent time kind of meeting and talking about what we want to do, what we want to see happen in our communities. And one of those things is kind of building relationships between different individuals, organizations, and groups. And finding kind of spaces and places where we can really connect and develop some action plans and kind of really engage individuals in the community. So I'd like to first introduce Breanne, if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about kind of the community work that you do.
Sure, thank you, Sandra. Dancha Breanne Dishnakokshin, Uchchi Viarush Pietaisra Titipayak. Hello, everyone. My name is Breanne. I come from Red River in Treaty 1 territory. I introduced myself in Michif, which is my language. I'm a member of Métis Nation. I guess for some context on my association with MARL, I completed a Bachelor of Arts in Human Rights at the University of Winnipeg at the Global College. So I was very involved with, different rights conversations that were happening in Winnipeg during that time. And then in 2016, I graduated from that program and went to Montreal to pursue a Juris Doctor and Bachelor of Civil Law at McGill University, which I completed in 2020. So moved back home during the pandemic and I came back to Red River after being gone for 4 years and came back and started working with other Métis folk who are interested in what land back means for us as a Métis people. And I've been specifically working with a new Métis collective called Red River Echoes. So we formed actually just a year ago, this past weekend was our birthday actually. But we formed a year ago in response to David Chartrand, president of the MMF, pulling out an advertisement in the Winnipeg Free Press, which was in support of the Winnipeg Police Service. And so as Métis people, we recognize that the police are a tool of colonial violence that have been used to dispossess us of our lands. That was unacceptable for us. And so we put out a letter saying this, and that we disagreed with the decisions of Métis leadership, that were acting against the interests of our people. And so since then, we've been doing a whole bunch of different things. We hosted a rendezvous in Wolseley last summer, the Wolseley neighborhood. And we talked about changing the name of the area. So that was a really big event for us. That was our first event with community, which was really nice. We got to engage with settlers and talk a little bit about what land back can look like. And yeah, that was a really great time. And then we also got the opportunity to go to Batoche. So that's the site of the last resistance against the Canadian state, 1885, where the Métis fought with our First Nations kin. And we went back, and it was really special for a group of 10 young Métis people to go there. Some of us had ancestors buried there, different things like that. So it was really powerful. And so, yeah, since over the winter, we've just been plotting for this summer, and we have all sorts of ideas for getting out on the land. And that's what I've been doing. Spending time with the land and working with other Métis folk to make land back a reality for us here in Red River.
Great, thank you very much. And we will have, the last half hour will be for questions. So if you want to just put any questions in the chat, then we can kind of look at those as we go along when we get into the question period. I'm going to pass it over to Clayton just to talk about some of the work that he's been doing.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. So my topic, I guess, today is what is the importance of relationships when working towards reconciliation. I think I could talk for a few hours on that, but I find that in my journey, I spent 40 years with the Manitoba government, and it just seems like in the beginning there was. The first department I worked in was natural resources, and there was 3 Indigenous people working there out of 160 staff. And I don't think we were actually ever included in relationship building, and I don't think we were ever included in most things. But it just seemed like there was no such thing as embracing any of our ideas or suggestions. So we were just kind of pushed to the side all the time. So over the years in my my time working in government and started to get comfortable, just defending the things that I was hearing about Indigenous people, and most of the stuff that I think I probably dealt with was probably an awful lot of racism in the beginning, an awful lot of racism, and just was really blatant I started in government in 1976, but it just felt like it was always open season on the Indians at the time, and it wasn't until I finally got confidence enough to start using my voice to start trying to correct people and trying to get people to understand our situation. So in the early 80s, I took a course at the Civil Service Commission. It was a 2-day course. The workshop was titled "Dealing with Native People," and so I signed up for the course and went to the Civil Service Commission. There was about 30 people there, and I was the only Indigenous person there, and then the instructor gets up, and it's a young Polish guy. And he was the instructor for 2 days. So I sat and listened for 2 days. And then, of course, the information we talked about, I probably had lived. And it wasn't until, probably within the next year, I went back and I asked if I could be seconded there to redevelop that program and to have an Indigenous person facilitate that. So I did that. I actually revamped the program and delivered it for a few years in government. And I think through that experience, I think that's when I really started building relationships with people. People were coming to the workshop and spending 2 days with me and learning about residential schools, Indian Act, and this was in the 80s. So everything that we're kind of talking about today, we were kind of doing that already in the 80s. And there's many times when people just said after the workshop, "I don't believe anything you just said." about residential schools, about the Indian Act, about people being taken away, people being abused. So people just outright just sometimes people just said that. Just I don't think that's. I think you're lying here. So it took a while for took many to get people to understand what we're talking about. And I remember my first workshop there, and people will probably know this guy's name. His name is Chris Vogel, and he was in my workshop, one of my first workshops. But of course, he was a gay individual, but he was one of the guys that really supported what I was saying, and really kind of took people to task. And him and I became good friends. And but it seemed like on that journey, I got to meet a lot of really good people, and people really started to wanting to know more and more and more. And of course, that leads us up to the Truth and Reconciliation, and the 7 years that went on. And I got to travel across Canada with the Truth and Reconciliation, sharing my story. And when the recommendations came out, I assisted Breanne to develop Circles of Reconciliation. We did that for 4 years, and that was supposed to be a Winnipeg project, and it turned out to be a Canadian project. So I got to travel different parts of Canada and just getting people together. And I felt at that time in 2016, I felt that there's some kind of a paradigm shift that I felt across Canada, that non-Native people wanted to actually get engaged and wanted to actually get active and do something, rather than just read about us and watch a program about us, but people wanted to get engaged. So since then, I've made a lot of good allies with different non-Native people that actually want to get active and make a difference. Today, I've developed a program called the Turtle Island Project, and we're just starting to get that out there. And it's a blanket exercise, but it's developed from 6 Native individuals that have lived experience. And so we're doing that now. And my network of non-Native people in Winnipeg is quite extensive. And I find that people who've actually connected with me and who've actually are open to asking all kinds of questions now, and they're not afraid to feel that they're insulting many of us that are actually talking about these issues today. And I've often found that, and I've said this for maybe 20 years. I've said that I think non-Native people are scared of Indians, are Native people, and it's been like that for a long, long time. And all they ever see is probably the worst of us. And people don't realize that in 2017, the census that was done in Winnipeg, it said that we have 93,000 Native people living within the perimeter. And so I say sometimes when I'm talking that, if there's 93,000 Indigenous people living in the perimeter, and you take maybe 2,000 and put them on Main Street or Portage Avenue, where's the other 91,000? People never talk about that, or we don't hear that part. And of course, Winnipeg is known as the largest resort in Canada. So we always seem to get either the praise or the brunt of Indigenous issues that are going on across Canada. But I find that because I live in a city that's known as the largest resort in Canada, it feels good that I can go anywhere in Winnipeg and run into an Aboriginal person, and of course we're at all different levels. But I wish people would talk more about the 91,000 people that are doing something for themselves and our taxpayers, but usually people that are reading the newspaper or watching the news or driving down the street, they don't see that part of us, and that prevents relationships from being built. So a big part of that is basically getting people to start sitting down talking, and we can only do that by basically sitting down like this and sharing our stories. And sharing stories both ways, and basically having the ability and the courage to say what's on your mind. So maybe I'll stop there, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Clayton. So I just wanted to share a little bit for myself. I'm Métis. But that's something that I didn't actually know until I was an adult. And I think I was just finishing a Bachelor of Education when kind of one of my grandfathers like just said our family had Indigenous ancestry. And there were people in the family that just denied that it was true. And so I started to do a little bit of research and was able to find kind of a lot of documents within the Hudson Bay Company. And there's a lot of documents there, but one of the things with the documentation there's a lot of information about the men in the family, but not very much information about women. So often it was like, it had the name of the man, like where he was born, all this information, and then it just says Native woman. And there was a lot of Nancys as well within that family, which, that wouldn't have been their given name. So, so I found that really frustrating. And, I felt angry over the years. I felt that, that there's that loss, right? And, within, Indigenous culture, there's a very strong oral tradition. So if the family isn't kind of passing those oral traditions down, then, we lose that information. And luckily, actually, I recently was contacted by a second cousin of mine who was able to kind of dig up some more research and found out that my great grandparents spoke Swampy Cree. And so, it's been kind of decades of work trying to put together, just a picture of, the cultural background of my family and trying to figure out how to reclaim that in an authentic way. I'm a teacher by trade. I started my career with a B.Ed. And one of the things, I guess, that I'm really passionate about is I would like to see Canada as a country. I would like to see equality for children, that all children receive the same resources for their education. They receive the same resources in social services and supports, and also within healthcare as well. And, we've seen this in January, there was kind of I guess, what is it called? Because the Canadian government is providing money for individuals that were kind of in the foster care system. What is that settlement called? Yeah, through the 60s. Yeah. So there are some kind of movements in that direction, but it's still something that's very slow. And it's still something that the Canadian government kind of appealed several times, having to kind of create equality for children kind of in not only our country, but also specifically within our province. So that's kind of something that's kind of really close to my heart, is just creating a country where we do not racially discriminate against children. And I mean, one of the people that within some of my research I've been able to work with is Flora Zaharia, and she was the first kind of Blackfoot. She was a Blackfoot elder. She is a Blackfoot elder, and she was the first woman that was the department head for Native education. And so, it's been kind of a privilege working with her and kind of looking at her career and working towards finding ways to make sure that, Indigenous children kind of receive the same kind of resources and supports and material there. Just looking, okay. So we have kind of prepared a few questions between just the panelists. So I did have a question, Breanne, and you've kind of spoke about this a little bit already, but a question for you, looking at what is the importance of land in your work?
Yeah. I do have something prepared that's different than what I had mentioned earlier for this specific question. So I guess first, I'm sorry to do this, but I always like to problematize questions. But I don't really think about myself as doing work. I just am a person that's being. But anyways, so for me, what land has done is land is my biggest teacher. As an Indigenous person, land is how I learn how to be human. I learn from all of my different relations. And so for me, one of the big things that has gone into that, like from the land of learning, is also from language. So we learn as Indigenous peoples, our languages are rooted in the land as well. And so often you'll hear how Indigenous languages, the words are often so much longer. So like blueberry pie will be blueberries wrapped in flour, covered in sugar, you know, and so you acknowledge all of the different parts that make the thing the whole. And so in doing that, you learn to recognize things that are living versus things that are non-living. And so in Nehia and Anishinaabe-Moan, two Indigenous languages that I've worked with and learned from and lived in for a little while, had the luck to do that, is the worldview. You see things as either living or non-living in Indigenous languages. There's no female male as there is in French or Spanish. And it's also less noun heavy. And so if you're not always talking about people, place, and thing, you talk more about verbs and about doing and being. And so that's what the land has taught me. And so through that, I like to practice, or I'm trying to practice now, non-hierarchical relationships. And so what that means is, as you see in the land, there's no hierarchies in the land. I know it looks like there might be because we've created things like food chains, but we all need each other, and that there's no us without all of the animals and all the plant kin who give up their lives for us. And that comes with an immense obligation as human beings. And so learning that, I learn how to be a good relative from all of the plants. I learn how to be a good relative from the animals. I learn how to be a relative from the water. And that informs how I then can treat my kin, my human kin. So Red River Echo is one way that we've been really intentional about learning with the land and living with the land, has been to practice non-hierarchies in the way that we organize together. So what that means is, even though we're a collective, we don't have any like leader. We all take turns being captain. And so different roles for captain include some of the administrative stuff that's necessary to get work done. But there's never a fixed position that's hierarchical. And so, yeah, that's one way that I've learned from the land and how it's informed the way that I relate to others in learning how to be a good human and good relative.
Great, thank you very much. And I like that, yeah, that connection between language and the land, right? Like, I think that's really interesting to understand. And I'm just going to introduce now Trevor, who had, yeah. Trevor, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the work that you do?
Hello, everyone. I'm Trevor Merasty. I'm an Indigenous committee member with MARL. I've also been doing a lot of community work within Winnipeg as a youth advocate for Manitoba advocacy for children's rights. And a little bit that I do mostly for the work with Manitoba Advocate is that we go around the community and we try to include a lot of our Indigenous youth into the events that we have planned out by the adult members and the youth members for Manitoba Advocacy. I've actually got connected to MARL through Macy, so I met someone that was coming to Macy and introduced me to MARL, so we got connected, and like it's been history ever since. So I really enjoy everything that's going on that I've been doing for the past 3 years. We really connected with schools, different independent organization and programs. We've actually done a couple art projects for murals around the city that sorry about that kind of advocate and represent the rights, that the 42 rights of the children and youth. I also make music for about 10 years of my life. And it's actually got me some great opportunities with Macy. So I've did a concert for Macy back in 2019 for the Triple CYA that was held over at the Fort Garry here in Winnipeg, and I got to perform in front of 150 people. Sorry, someday. And I got to kind of like just talk about like where I came from as an Indigenous youth who grew up in the foster care. So I have a lot of background with CFS and also discrimination and stuff in school. They really, helped me find like more different resources for Indigenous people. From where I come from a small community in Thompson, Manitoba. And there wasn't really anything for the youth. And so like the crime rate there is very high. There's a couple things for the youth, but there's an age vary. So there's only youth up to 5 to 11 years old. And they only have one program like that. So I actually talked to Manitoba Advocacy and said, hey, you know what? This would be cool in Thompson because, like, I was overlooked when I got a hold of you guys here in Winnipeg, make things happen. So I had the opportunity to do an opening for them, and I got to open Manitoba Advocacy in Thompson for my community. There's one project that's coming up right now for Macy, and it's going to be another mural, but it's for the Bear Clan in the North End here in Winnipeg. I'm not sure. We're still having meetings and discussing them right now because we bring out painters that are local. We also bring in youth from Manitoba Advocacy. So we have a youth group called YAS, and it stands for Youth Ambassador Advisory Squad. And that's what I'm a part of. And we bring in youth from around the community and surrounding communities. And we come together and we elaborate on something or what we think would capture the public eye. So that's one thing that I'm currently working on. I am at work right now. I have a second job. I'm a chef. And it's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Trevor. And we had a workshop with some UNESCO students 2 weeks ago, and so Trevor shared some of his rap, and so the students were asking a lot of questions, about like how he got involved in doing music and just connecting that to his advocacy.
Mm-hmm. Also, I don't like bragging about this, but I'm an actor too. I do acting. I'm in a movie. I just finished filming the movie on Halloween in 2021, and I'm currently doing another movie, which is the film date is for next week, and they're all independent short films.
Excellent. Thank you. There's two. Oh, I see, Breanne, you've answered one of the questions in the chat. So what I think we'll do now is I'll just stop record, and then we can have kind of, we'll take kind of questions from everyone here, and so I'll just stop record at this point.